Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is What a Scream, the horror movie podcast where myself, the host, Oh Golly Miss Dolly, chats horror films with a special guest every week. And in particular, we chat about two horror films that we feel perfectly encompass a certain subgenre or topic that I've previously randomly chosen. So this week's episode is... Again, I always feel like, so when I have this specific guest on, apart from like the first episode, I always feel that this is like, these are the subjects I have where I'm not overly familiar or I wouldn't be a big fan of. But however, this week I discuss horror musicals with a friend of the podcast, Ruby Noir. And we have a good old chat about why or if even horror and musicals kind of go hand in hand, if they work. Ruby is a musical aficionado. She knows a lot more than I would when it comes to musicals. I am barely a fan. I like a few. I like a few. Let's say I could count them on one hand, all of the musicals that I like. Ruby kind of schools me when it comes to this, again, like she did with the Hammer Horror. So this week we are chatting about 1975's Rocky Horror Picture Show because it is such a classic, and I don't think we could have done a horror musical episode without talking about this. We also chat about 2008's Repo, the genetic opera, and we'll also be having a brief chat about others like Anna and the Apocalypse, Little Shop of Horrors, Sweeney Todd, and a few other horror musicals that are out there. So if you're into horror musicals, get your pencil and paper because you'll need to jot all these down. There's a few surprises in there as well that you wouldn't think would be horror musicals. A few that surprised me as well. So here it is, my chat with Ruby Noir about horror musicals. So I would like to invite back to the podcast. I'll invite you now.
Too late, bitch. I'm already here.
Yeah, I would like to welcome back to the podcast, podcast regular, Ruby Noir.
Hello, it's me, and I'm still not you. Thanks for having me back.
No problem. You're still not me, but yet my son still gets very confused.
That was so fun. So we've talked about this before, how a lot of people seem to mix us up, and we don't see it. But if your own son,
my
your
own
own
child
progeny, is looking at two of us side by side and going, which one is my mum? I think we have a problem.
At least
Maybe
I know now
wrong.
I can sneak away and you can come look after him and he won't know the difference.
I know. For a couple of hours, I could probably babysit and just bamboozle him. He'd be like, I don't see any difference.
Yeah. Just keep feeding him chocolate. He'll be fine.
The one major difference is I have no idea what to do with a child. I'm like, just point it at the telly and put on SpongeBob. Yeah. That way we'd both be entertained.
So how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
Good.
The world is opening up a bit more, which is nice.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be able to get out and see things in the cinema soon.
Mm-hmm.
See each other in person soon.
That would be nice. Yeah, that would be great. I'm all for getting back to seeing people and just being able to just talk to someone.
I know. We're very, very slowly sort of opening up the people that we're seeing in person. So there's a few extra people here and there, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But it's weird because you think that it doesn't affect you that much, and then you meet someone who you haven't seen in a while, and you can't stop talking at them. I haven't spoken to anyone in person that isn't my partner in a year.
See, I get the opposite. When I see someone that I haven't seen in a while, I forget how to communicate. And it's like my brain is talking, but my mouth forgets. So I'm just sitting there nodding.
Notice I did say talking at and not talking with. Not good communication to just word vomit at someone for an hour.
Whereas I'm like, how do I socialize?
So really, it'd be perfect if I'll just chalk at you until your brain catches up and you can be like, oh yeah.
Just to note, we both sound like this today because it was Eurovision last night.
It was great.
I've lost my voice from shouting for Italy.
Yeah, I was also shouting for Italy and getting
Yeah.
very excited about Iceland. I'm very in love with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been horsing down the Strepsils for the last hour, trying
I didn't even bother.
get everything smoothed out. We're a little bit husky today. It's our sexy voices.
Yeah. Yeah, I just felt that Italy was like the perfect depiction of my sexuality.
Yeah, I feel like the lead singer was probably like eyeing up all of Serbia's act and being like, see, you guys are leader.
Yeah. Well, they cut to a shot where he was hugging them all and they were all just hugging him. And it was like, someone's getting laid.
Well, because it must have been hard for them because I'd imagine they were not able to do like any socializing in the semi-finals week. So I'd say once the competition's over, it's going to be like a massive party because they're like, fuck it, we can like, even if we get COVID, we can just go home and chill.
Yeah. I think that's why Iceland wasn't in.
Yeah, so one of them had been diagnosed with COVID and they did have the option to perform without that person, but they said, no, we do it together. We don't do it at all. So, which was nice, I think.
Yeah. That was cute.
And I'm because I don't know if you know, so one of the members of the band is his wife, and she was like so pregnant she could barely move. Bless her, in her like jumper.
They're so cute. Yeah, I found a lot of like there was like the glam rock, and then we had a bit of nerd pop going on. And then obviously we've got the girls in their shiny, shimmery bodysuits. Yes,
it was definitely the year of the silver bodysuit of various. There was some that would have been critiqued by Michelle Visage had she been there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think she sometimes does the commentary in the US as well. So I think I would love to hear it if she did. She'd be like, I don't like it how it's cut. Basic. We've seen this before.
I thoroughly enjoyed the Eurovision last night.
Yes, we both did. And I'm sure many of your listeners will think watching the Eurovision, the ultimate horror experience.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's a good setting for a horror film.
Yeah, I can see. Can you imagine it's like a horror film, just like serial killer slowly picking off Eurovision entries?
Right? I mean, you could go down the zombie lane as well, but I don't think it would be as fun as serial killer, like killing every country with like their own props or something.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like zombies have kind of been done in that thing, like, like Dead Set or something with like the Big Brother thing. So like you kind of got that. But yeah, I think a serial killer would be good.
Yeah. We're copywriting that. That's our idea.
Yeah. So someone being like throttled to death with the strap of their keytar,
Yeah.
Or that like, Spain had that giant moon and he's like singing, doing his like very pitchy big note. And then like the moon just like splash.
I feel they should set the next Scream in it, to be honest.
That'd be amazing.
Scream meets the Eurovision. So let's move on to our theme this week, which is musicals. Horror musicals. I could have said that a bit jazzier, couldn't I? It's musicals.
Musicals. I'm so happy.
And this has been a while in the making. Ever since we did our first episode, we were like, we have to do a musical episode.
I'm so excited.
You're a big fan of musicals, aren't you?
I am. This is my oeuvre.
Yes. And I'm like Hammer Horror, I'm on the other end of the spectrum where I do not like them save one.
I hope this isn't quite as much as like the last time where I show up and be like, this is great. You're like, no, it's all terrible. So I was on Hammer, I was vindicated. There were lots of people in the comments on socials that were like, what are you talking about? Horror's great. I was like, yes.
I think I had one person be like, I agree with you. And that was it. Like, whereas everyone else was really passionate about defending Hammer.
I think because Hammer is probably something that a lot of people saw as like relatively young.
Yeah.
So it's like very much a gateway kind of thing. And I'd imagine that this probably falls into the same category, particularly with the one that we're going to talk about first.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel about horror musicals? Do you think that it translates well, it merges well, or?
Yeah, I think it can do. Like I've done a number from the Evil Dead musical. I think that it's like because like the whole thing about musicals is that like, you feel so much that you feel so much that you can't talk, you have to sing, and then you sing so much that you have to dance. And I think that like horror is very heightened emotion, so it does kind of make sense. Like it's more towards the comedy end of things because I think the nature of musicals mean that it's hard to be like frightening. But music is also very emotionally evocative. So I think when it's done right, it can be really amazing.
Yeah. And when it's done wrong, it's horrible.
Yeah.
So will we talk about the first musical? We're not really doing a your musical, my musical. We're kind of just talking about all of them.
Yeah, I have too many opinions, basically.
Yeah. So the first one, which was kind of like the one that I was like, I'm definitely going to do this because it's my favorite musical ever. The only musical I like is, of course, the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Of course. The classic, the ultimate.
Yes. It's a 1975 feature film directed by Jim Sharman, written by Sharman and Richard O'Brien, who also stars. And it's based on the 1973 musical stage production. It is pretty much a parody tribute to science fiction and horror B movies. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love it so much.
Yeah, it is chock-a-block full of references from everything to like early 1930s RKO films right through to like 70s like mad sci-fi stuff. And it's a love letter to like the rock opera as well, which is really fun.
Yeah. So it stars Tim Curry, Susan Sarandon, Barry Bostwick, Nell Campbell, and Patricia Quinn, even, as well as Richard O'Brien. And it follows two engaged people, and they break down and they go to find a phone, and they come across the castle of Dr. Frankenfurter. And
I love the idea of this Gothic castle in the middle of the American Midwest.
Right? So. Yeah. You're like, I have questions. Yeah. And they are met with Riff Raff, who is the handyman of the house. He's Sister Magenta. Dr. Frankenfurter, who is the mad scientist character who is building Rocky, or the creature, and craziness ensues. And it's such a hard thing to describe to someone without being like, yeah, just have to watch it.
Yeah. It is, it's an experience and a half. And like I have been to the live like version, not the live stage show, but like the screening with the performances and stuff many times, and like you always see someone who's never been there before and like possibly has never even seen the movie, and they are always just like, what the fuck is happening? I think they feel that way about the movie even before you have all these people screaming and shouting and throwing things.
Like I think Rocky Horror is one of my very earliest horror movie kind of experiences, and it was very much I accidentally saw it one night. I was staying up late. It must have been like a New Year's Eve or something. And we were over at like one of my family friends' houses, and they were all drinking in the kitchen. I was in the living room, turned on TV, and I saw Tim Curry in a corset. Oof. I was like, what is this?
A very specific sexual awakening, I think, for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Like, what's happening? I don't know, but I like it.
And then it wasn't until a lot later when they used to have the screenings at the Sugar Club here in Dublin,
which they still do when it's not okay.
That I went to it, and then you're given popcorn and toast, and it's all about and I was like, what's going on? I don't want to eat this toast. What's going on?
And please don't eat the toast. It is very stale. I don't think they give stuff out anymore. They you have to bring your own accoutrement if you want to throw things.
Oh, okay.
But they will give you hot chocolate in the queue, which is nice of them.
That's nice.
Very sweet of them.
So what do you think of Rocky Horror as a whole, as the whole kind of film and story, first off?
I mean, I fucking love this movie. Again, like yourself, I would have encountered it at a relatively young age and just been mesmerized by the whole thing. I mean, it helps a lot, obviously, that the tunes are banging. Like they are iconic for a reason. So like I honestly probably don't think I can give like an unbiased good critique of this movie, because I love it so much and I know it so well. Like I know it inside and out. Like there's so much about it that has just worked its way into into so many aspects of pop culture. Like even if you don't know this movie very well, maybe if you even haven't seen it, you probably know the Time Warp. You probably know Sweet Transvestite. You definitely know the Tim Curry as Frankenfurter. So much of it is just like ubiquitous with certain kinds of like culture at this point. Like it's yeah, it's sort of transcended itself at this point,
Yeah.
I think.
It really has. Just going back to the music, it's set against, well, it was from the mid 1970s, so it's set against very glam rock.
Yeah.
And Richard O'Brien has even said that, you know, glam rock helped him explore his sexuality, and that's why he wanted this musical to be glam rock. And it's just, I mean, obviously you can see a lot of like the T-Rex, you know, Mark Bolan influences, especially in the character of Dr. Frankenfurter. But the music is just incredible. Everybody knows the Time Warp. Everybody, as you said, even if you hadn't seen the film, everyone knows the song The Time Warp. And it's just, but even the other songs that aren't as well known, they're so catchy.
Yeah.
And they're so well written and they're so well sung as well. And it's just, I love the fact that with Rocky Horror, is, you know, when you see a lot of other musicals and you're like, well, I only want to be that character because they have the best song, the best lines. Rocky Horror, I love all the characters. And I was like, yeah, I'd be any one of them, like at the drop of a hat. Like,
absolutely. I feel exactly the same way. No, it's just, a lot of the like lesser known songs are really gorgeous. Like one of my favorites is actually I'm Coming Home. Like, so for this kind of big finale, which is a beautiful song. Like, it's stunning. And Tim Curry's performance of it is, again, just iconic. I'm going to be saying that about every aspect of this film. It's like, it's iconic. It's iconic.
I really like There's a Light.
That was one of the other ones I was going to say. I think that's a beautiful song. Really nice harmonies.
Yeah. It's just, all of it is so well sung and so well composed. And they really did a perfect cast for the film.
They really, really did. There was one addition from that wasn't in the stage show, which is Meatloaf.
Yeah. But why would you not want to include Meatloaf?
Why would you not want to include Meatloaf? He also clearly having the time of his fucking life. And as far as I'm aware, and now I might be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that they basically, like, they needed a name to get financing, and they're like, okay, Meatloaf.
Yeah. Meatloaf's like, yes. I love that so much. So the film was shot in Bray Studios, which harkens back to our Hammer Horror episode.
Yes.
And the castle does have a very Hammer Horror-esque vibe.
I think there is a very clear line of influence for the aesthetics, at least. There's that sort of like very rich color, like highly gothic sort of vibe to it. But it's also this very sort of pop punk aesthetic as well when you get to like the lab. And like they like whoever bought the like lighting gels for this one just went fucking crazy. They were like, how many colors? All of the colors.
Every single one of them.
All of the colors.
Well, so we see like the interior of the castle when they're doing the time warp, you know, when the Brad and Janet first come into the castle, and it's very gothic horror, lots of spider webs. And then when they move up to the lab, it reminded me a lot of Dario Argento. You know, he's kind of set.
Definitely see that. Bit more sparse and quite like expansive.
And it kind of reminded me a lot of that, and it's such a strong contrast to like the kind of gothiciness of the other parts of the castle.
Because it does go back and forth. I suppose there is that, it's that alien sensibility versus like the gothicness that I think they're supposed to associate with humanity, essentially. Because then you have the bedrooms, which are also very gothic. It's all billowing chiffon and looming silhouettes of shadows of people, which is very Dracula. And then obviously the dinner scene upon they're dining on a coffin and shit.
I was like, that's what I need for my dining room.
That is, you just whip the tablecloth back and be like, you've been eating your sister. Very dramatic. I love it. But then there's this like very 1930s influence things in the pool with the that like there's obviously the very like the RKO tower built, which I'm always obsessed with, that King Kong moment at the end. Just like a little queer girl, I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I love it.
It's just, no matter how many times I've watched this film, I will just I watch it at least once a year, like at least.
No, I end up seeing it a lot because my partner is actually in the Rocky Horror Ireland cast. So I usually go and see them when they're performing. So, which is always a weird, like, it's a weird kind of situation because depending on the crowd that you have, it can be, it can kind of go a couple of different ways as an experience. Like I find it quite intense. Like sometimes I'm really in the mood for it, and then other times I'm like, I need to go and have a break from all these people. But it's because people are so into it. Like people like, you can tell for some people, like this is their night out.
Yeah.
Like a year. They go to this, like they go to the Valentine's show and they go to the Halloween show. And that's when they go out, and this is like their thing. Yeah. And they fucking love it. And I'm so into that enthusiasm for something.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about the release a bit and how we got to these kind of shows. So when it was released, it didn't really do well critically at all. And so the only way they could kind of get it into cinemas was doing midnight films. Mm-hmm. And then because a lot of the people that went to the midnight films were kind of like the edge of society, you know, kind of outcasts, and you know, that's where it started to gain its popularity. And then the conception of shadow casts came in, and people dressing up to go. Like, why do you think that it just exploded like this in this way?
I think a lot of people related to the exploration of sexuality and gender and all that stuff that they were seeing on screen. And then there's also just like the pure kitsch fun factor. Yeah. Like, which should not be kind of underestimated. Like you can go into all the, you know, the kind of the queer studies aspect of it, but it's like, it's great tunes that are easy to sing along with. The costumes are relatively easy to copy. Like there's nothing too like crazy expensive or difficult to recreate. And it's just so kitschy and fun, and it almost invites that like interactive element. Yeah. And people obviously just really connected with that.
Yeah. And especially because of the 70s again, androgyny was such a big thing. Yeah. And that's, you know, especially with the opening titles, we see like Patricia Quinn's mouth, but Richard O'Brien's voice, and kind of introduces this theme of androgyny. And it really felt like, especially the queer community, the LGBT community really like grasped onto it because of its kind of depiction of androgyny, bisexuality, you know, queer identities. And I just feel that that's why it became such like an embraced musical as well. Yeah.
I think something interesting has happened though as well, and like now this is purely my own kind of anecdotal observations, so just in case I like, please don't like take this up the wrong way, but definitely the screenings that I've been to more recently, the audience is probably majority straight. It is big, but I think, or like at least if not straight, kind of more heteronormative presenting. Yeah. And I think it's become this thing that allows people who essentially identify as straight to like practice what like their little bit of queerness in what is a socially acceptable way. Like, and that's more of a hangover probably from like the 90s, the 80s and the 90s than it really is now. But it's kind of, it's like this weird thing where it's like a bunch of people who probably live relatively straight lives, for lack of a better term, get to come out and be really queer for a night.
Yeah. Do you think that it has held up well?
Yeah.
Like, I know there's a lot of not a lot of controversy, but there are some, you know, especially if you're a young person from, you know, Gen Z or whatever the hell they're called, looking at it now and not knowing the history of it, it could definitely be seen as very, very problematic. What do you think of that?
I honestly, I don't know. I think you'd have to try really hard to see any sort of genuine ill intent for whatever about kind of it being of its time. Yeah. Like, even for its time, it was trying to express something that was very transgressive and very queer. Did it do it in language that is acceptable today? Not necessarily, but like, I think you'd have to like really be looking to be offended to see something like genuinely problematic and like harmful in it.
Yeah. I mean, I know, like, looking back when I watched it, obviously the bedroom scenes are a bit you're a bit kind of like
the sort of like pretending to be someone else and seducing and seducing people, but you know, and so there is certainly like a problematic aspect of that. But I mean, there's also the point where they realize that it's Frankenfurter and then do give active consent.
Yes.
You know what, actually true. I'm super into this, so. And they would
who wouldn't be?
And they would have made a lovely throuple had they been allowed.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm actually, apparently throuple isn't a good phrase anymore. So I do apologize.
Oh, is it not?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I heard somewhere that apparently it's not preferred anymore.
Okay.
But so just in case, I'm sorry.
Okay. They would have made a great polyamorous relationship.
Group.
There we go.
Yes.
Words today are hard.
Words today are hard. But yeah, no, I think if you're coming at it with absolutely no context, certainly an eyebrow or two could be raised for good reason. But yeah, I don't know. Like I say, I do really think that you'd have to try hard to find any intent of harm.
Yeah. And, it was written by a queer man who was amongst the queer kind of community.
A queer non-binary person, actually. They came out as non-binary a few years ago.
Okay. There you go. You learn something new every day. So what do you think is his legacy?
The legacy of Rocky, I think we're probably going to talk about soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like there's so much of that, like playing with gender performance and like kitschness and campness that is like influenced by Rocky in a really good way. Yeah, and like the thing is, it's kind of hard. Like, I mean, one of the other movies that we're going to talk about is basically trying to be a modern day Rocky in a sense and failing. But so there's always like people dream of being that kind of cult classic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it hasn't been recreated. Like no other musical has this such a strong cult kind of following that I know of anyway.
Not, I suppose, outside of like kind of musical theater like fans. The only thing I can think of that I think is remotely comparable, and it's not nearly as good, and it's not a musical either. It's probably The Room.
Okay, yeah.
Because that has similar sort of like cult following, group screenings where people shout at the screen and throw things, but it's kind of for a different reason.
Yeah.
It's the so bad it's good thing. Whereas like I do think Rocky Horror Picture Show is a genuinely good film. Yeah.
I've actually never seen The Room, but like I was made to watch all the good bits on YouTube. So like I know all the kind of,
It's actually really, really fun. And I've been to 2 screenings of it, which were also very, very fun in the same genre as going to a Rocky Horror Picture Show screening. Like really good crack.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just Rocky Horror, as we said before, even if you haven't seen it, you've definitely seen it on Glee, or you've seen it being mentioned in like Perks of Being a Wallflower, whatever it's called. That film.
Perks of Being a Wallflower, yeah.
Thank you. And, it was mentioned on that 70s show and lots of other shows.
Yeah.
And so it really has made such an impact in our culture.
Yeah, completely. And like, I don't think there is a person out there who, as we've already said, doesn't know the time warp. And it's also, Rocky is always a funny one because like as I've said, I'm a massive musical theater fan, and you get a lot of people when you tell them that you're a musical theater fan, they go, oh, I hate musicals. And you're like, okay, well, I don't know why you need to tell me that, but fine. And then they go, except for Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
And Cabaret and Chicago and all the Disney movies. Anyway. I'm not bitter.
You're like, I will convert you.
I don't mind if people don't like musicals. I totally get it. It's just this thing where people seem to have this insistence on telling me that they hate them and why they hate them, but with all these very specific exceptions. And like, you're allowed like some musicals and not all music. Like,
you know what?
Right,
I like certain songs from musicals.
That's absolutely fine.
One song from Les Miserables that I like, just that one song. The same with Cats. There's one song that I like in Cats. Obviously not the film. We could have used
the film.
No. And I keep meaning to watch it just so I know what everyone's talking about. But
I was like, I think it's probably the second most traumatizing cinema experience I've ever had.
What was the first?
Dancer in the Dark. It was also a musical and just like, oh God. Or maybe Martyrs. That was pretty hard. Yeah. Like, oh God. Such close-up playing on such a large screen. No, like Cats is like, you want to talk about a genuine horror experience. Like, holy shit, that was bad. Like, it was like awful. Awful, awful. I kind of like, I know it's been like a joke and everyone was talking about
Yeah.
it, but like I actually cannot impress upon you how bad this fucking film was.
I feel like I'm
Like,
gonna have to watch it now.
yeah, listen, get some friends together, have a couple of drinks, shout at the screen, but
Yeah.
like, just
I'm not sure
God,
I
I'm
could
having
get
trauma
people to watch it
flashbacks.
with me.
Uh, if you let me like just like cradle a bottle of wine, I will watch it with you. Just drinking from the bottle.
Yeah, I'll get your straw.
Look at them, they're unfinished, unrendered human hands.
Oh,
Why are they the wrong size? So upsetting, so upsetting.
So back to Rocky Horror.
Yeah, sorry.
Would you recommend it to horror fans?
I would recommend this to literally anyone.
Yeah.
Random strangers on the street. I'd be like, have you not seen Rocky Horror Picture Show? You should be watching it right now.
I'm here to tell you the good word.
Knock on your door. I'm here to talk to you about Frankenfurter. Yeah. No, I would. Yeah. I think like horror fans would be remiss not to watch it because like there's so much even in modern day horror, I think, that like borrows from it.
Yeah.
Like from an aesthetic point of view and from like again like that kitsch camp sensibility. I think it's a seminal text in the horror canon.
Yeah. And you know what always scared me a little bit about Rocky when I was younger, especially, you know, the crowd,
they're freaky.
They're really creepy. And like they've got those weird squeaky voices that are obviously overdubbed. And then they've all got like sunglasses on and tuxes and
party hats.
Yeah, and it always freaked me out really, really badly.
Yeah, actually, like this movie does not have a lot of choreography, but there is some really good crowd choreography that's just like very effective in the background.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed.
So yeah, I definitely recommend it to horror fans as well. So let's move on to another film. Which one would you like to do first?
Let's do. I'm assuming that you liked this one the least of the two of these.
Yeah.
Let's do the one that's one of the ones that we talked about doing because said Rocky Horror Picture Show, and then I was like for a modern sort of equivalent.
Yeah.
So, and I also happen to have done this relatively recently on my own podcast. I was like, I already watched this. I don't have to do it again. And so it's Repo the Genetic Opera, which is a 2008 film directed by Darren Lynn Bousman and written by Darren Smith and Terence Zudnich, who also stars as Gravedigger. It stars Alexa Vega, Paul Sorvino, Anthony Stewart Head, Sarah Brightman, Paris Hilton, Bill Moseley, Nivek Ogra, and Terence Zudnich. As I previously said, it has actually gained quite a cult following, similar to Rocky Horror, and I believe Terence Zudnich. Sorry, I apologize. Terence, we'll just call him Terry.
Yeah, Terry.
El Ter. He actually tours with it and does like a kind of stage show version, which I think is interesting. So the basic plot is it is set in the year 2056. And there was a plague that broke everyone's internal organs down, and GeneCo provides organ transplants, but they are all basically lent out.
Yeah.
So everyone's on back pay for their organs. They got all their organs on layaway, and if you can't pay, the repo man comes and literally rips out the organs that you got replaced. And it's also. So there's a few other things going on. There is a drug problem with the Zydrate. I was just trying to remember. I was like singing the song in my head. Zydrate comes in a little blue vial. Oh no. So everyone's addicted to this like off-brand morphine, essentially painkiller, because they've all had so many like cosmetic surgeries and it's all become kind of elective. Sarah Brightman of like original cast of Phantom of the Opera fame stars as Blind Mag, who's like an opera singer who is sort of owned by GeneCo, and Alexa Vega plays Shiloh, who's like her dad is keeping her locked up, pretending that she's sick, but he actually just doesn't want to let her out because the world is fucking hideous. And like, there's a lot going on in this film, you guys.
So much going on
in this film. The soundtrack is interesting. It's not a long film. I think it's under 2 hours.
Yeah.
It has a crazy amount of songs. It's got 22 songs.
I mean, it's mainly, there's not a lot of straight dialogue.
No, it's almost sung through.
Yeah.
As we would say on the stage. It is almost sung through. All the exposition is done through music, which is how it should be done in a musical, to be fair. But like, there isn't a sort of through line stylistically. They seem to be just throwing a lot at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot of rock. Joan Jett shows up at one point.
Right? Yeah. I'd forgotten that was like the first watch when it first came out. And then when I watched it again, I was like, is that Joan Jett?
Yeah. But like, yeah, it's a weird one. So you've got Sarah Brightman, and actually Paul Sorvino is also a trained operatic singer. So you've got a lot of like legit sort of rock opera. It's operatic singing with like a very kind of heavy guitar scoring.
Yeah.
But then you have these other songs that are just proper rock songs, I guess. A lot of them are very short. Yeah. Like, to be fair, if you don't like a song, it'll end soon. Another one will be along. Some of it's catchy, some of it's fucking awful. Like, I think there's some good ideas in this film, but I also think that like no one ever sat them down and edited shit. They got a couple of $1 million from somewhere and were like, let's do all of it.
Yes, that's what it could have done with more editing, I think. I'm not a fan of the sing through, as you said. I like to have breaks in between so my mind can process the music, process the song, process its place in the story. I mean, I think if we compare it to Rocky, you do have that straight dialogue in Rocky, that break. And I think that's what, like, when I think about Repo, the only song that stands out in my is the Zytrate
Anatomy. Yeah,
that's the one that sticks in my head, and they're like surgery. That's the only one, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what the others are because there's no break in between them. So I got really like confused, and as I said, my brain didn't quite process them as songs that I could remember.
Yeah. And like the weird thing about Repo as well, so in a lot of sung through musicals, so some that you would think of would be Les Mis is a sung through musical. Sweeney Todd is pretty much sung through. Hamilton is another one. And you have what is called recitative pieces, which are essentially those kind of bits in between the songs. Yeah. But that are like, you know, da 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 da. So it's not really a song, it's sort of patter almost. And that you need that to connect everything musically for people to be able to settle into that mode of absorbing your plot, essentially, your dialogue. And whereas this is like, they are like individual songs, and because they're not connected with like a theme or a leitmotif or anything like that, there's no musical through line. Yeah. You just end up being like, well, I don't know what's going on. Yeah.
Wait, who's and
it's hard now? It is hard to process, and you end up forgetting things. There is like one recurring motif which shows up most prominently in one of the Sarah Brightman songs called Break the Morning. It's the da, 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 da. And that kind of shows up in a few other places, but not consistently. Yeah. So it's like watching lots of tiny little musicals. Not great.
Let's talk about the casting. I feel like it's an interesting casting.
Look, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of love it. Like any movie that went out, God love El Terry. He walked up to Paris Hilton and was like, "Do you want to be in a movie? We're gonna peel your face off." And she said yes. Her face falls off. It's great.
I really enjoyed Bill Moseley in it, but I would enjoy Bill Moseley in anything because I love him as a horror actor. I love Anthony Head because it's Giles, and he looks like he's actually having fun in this.
He's having a lot of fun, and he's a great singer. Yeah. As I was saying before we started recording, he actually played Dr. Frankenfurter on a Broadway production of Rocky Horror Show. Yeah. I think around 2004, 2005-ish. Do not quote me on that. But like, it was a great revival, and he was really popular. Yeah. And it's nice to see him be given a role like that, and clearly just having great crack.
Yeah. Like, he looked like I mean, obviously he'd got a bit of a taste for it from Buffy
Yeah.
and was like, I need to carry this on now.
Yeah, he's got a song that I'm trying to what's it called? Thankless Job,
Yeah.
which is the one where he's like, and he's like, he really gets into the growl of it, and like for the
Yeah.
entire song he's just like ripping organs out of
Yeah.
someone, and it's very funny. Like I legit enjoyed that sequence.
I did enjoy that sequence. You know what, when you look at the horror of it,
Mm,
the gore, the body horror, the
yeah.
even the like the premise of loaning out organs and then, you know, someone coming after you to get them back. Like it is a really good premise for a horror.
Yeah.
And even like there was one bit where he like rips the spine out of someone. And that's brilliant. Like it's so well done and it's so gross and gory. And like, as you said, when Paris Hilton's face falls off,
Yeah.
like
It's
it is gory and horrific.
I think they put like all of their money into soundtrack production and special effects because everything
Yeah.
else looks super duper cheap.
Yeah.
Like the fucking costumes, you guys, don't get me started. Like so, like you got those like those purple fishnets from fucking Shoko and put them on his sleeves, like I did when I was 14 years old, and just ran with it. Like anyway,
Yeah.
but like yeah, the special effects score is
Mm.
really good, and there is one of the characters, one of the Jinko kids, Pavi, I think he's got this
Mm.
really cool like stretched on skin
Yeah.
mask thing that looks awesome.
Yeah. It looks really gross. It's like
It
stapled
does.
onto his like face.
Yeah, it's very grotesque,
Yeah.
in a really cool way. So yeah, it's a frustrating watch, I think, because I think this film has good bones. It's got a really
Yeah.
cool premise. It's got some great casting in certain areas, but there's
Yeah.
just too much other stuff going on.
Yeah. I mean,
And
then we have this like whole sideline of like the grave robber and the drugs that are rife in the city, but it's never really built upon. It's just kind of like, oh, it's just there.
yeah, so he's supposed to be sort of functioning essentially as the narrator.
Yeah.
But he's not, again, it's not used consistently. If
Yeah.
he was used from the beginning, and it's like he kind of is, and he definitely does like the end, and then like he's sort of explaining this world to Shiloh. It doesn't help that like Shiloh, your main ostensibly your main character, is really fucking annoying.
Oh, she's the worst character out of everyone. Like
She's
the
awful, yeah.
worst. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're just like, ugh, I don't care about you or your dad or your dead mother. Who cares about your dead mom?
Shut up, Shiloh. But yeah, I just didn't like it. I just felt it was a bit too all over the shop. I mean, I know I read somewhere it's actually meant to be a three-parter. There's meant to be like two other films, but they just cannot get they cannot get funding for it. So.
Oh my God. What would you even do? Like, they did it all in that one movie.
They stuffed it all in there.
They stuffed it all in there. And like, I suppose I can understand, like, yeah, it's only 98 minutes.
Mm.
I can understand, like, especially like from an indie filmmaker, they'll need to be like, fuck, we might not get this chance again.
Yeah.
So I do get it, but yeah, like someone needed to sit them down and be like, you need to start killing some darlings.
Yeah. So would you recommend Repo to?
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time I've recommended it to people and they've been disappointed. So you know what? Sure. You know what you're walking into after listening to this.
Yeah. I'd recommend it for its gore, and I liked its comic book-esque kind of.
I think, yeah, there's like
Yeah.
title plates and interstitial plates that are comic book panels, and they're really well drawn. It's a very cool kind of aesthetic. Yeah, look, it's one of those ones that you're either going to like, I think, kind of enjoy for all its faults, or you're just going to fucking hate it. So
Yeah.
and it's hard to tell because some people I've been like, oh, you're going to hate that, and they've loved it. Like, catchy. And then other people that I was like, oh, you're going to enjoy this because it's like stupid and kind of awful, but you like that kind of thing. And they've been like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. So
Yeah, kind of 50-50.
50-50. Yeah.
Watch it anyway though. So the next musical, do you want to introduce that as well?
Yeah. So this is newer again. So this is called Anna and the Apocalypse. It was released in 2017, directed by John McPhail, screenplay by Alan MacDonald and Ryan McHenry. It was based on a short film that was done called Zombie the Musical. And it stars Ella Hunt as Anna, Malcolm Cunningham, Sarah Swire, Christopher Laveau, and Ben Wiggins. And then there are a few. Marley Sue is one who I want to as Lisa. I just wanted to make sure I included her because she is my favorite number in the entire musical. That Christmas number, and a few other fun people in the wider ensemble cast. So it's a pretty straightforward film. It is about Anna, who is a secondary school student in Scotland.
Yeah.
And she gets up one day and goes to school, and there is a zombie apocalypse. And so it's her and her friends trying to make it to the school, which they've been told the army will pick them up there. Her dad is in the school. The headmaster's gone a bit mad. There are zombies. Yeah. And also fun musical numbers. I actually saw this in the cinema as part of Horathon a few years ago.
Okay.
And I fucking loved it. I think it's it's not perfect, but I think it's got a really fun sensibility. Good zombies, a good cast who are clearly having fun. And it's kind of got this sort of they're clearly trying to do High School Musical but with zombies vibe musically, which I really enjoyed. And it's got some good tracks.
Yeah. I feel like, Rocky Horror Picture Show, I was like, yeah, fucking love it. Repo, I'm like, fucking hate it. This one, I'm like, I'm not sure. I mean, while I was watching it, it's very like Shaun of the Dead.
There is a lot of influence from Shaun of the Dead, for sure.
A lot. There's one number where she leaves the house and she's walking along being like, this is going to be a great day. Not noticing all the zombies and the apocalypse happening behind her, basically. And I was like, that is ripped straight out of Shaun of the Dead, apart from the singing.
No, it is absolutely ripped directly out of Shaun of the Dead. No, I think there's some strong influences from Shaun of the Dead and from Zombieland as well. Yeah. Like those kinds of like zombie comedy vibes, they're pulling very closely from that stuff. Yeah.
The music, I'm kind of not sure about. I think just because, like you said, it's very High School Musical and it's very much like, I want to get out of this town.
Yes.
And, that kind of, it's very Americanized musical numbers, and I wish they had set it more in Scotland. If you're going to be like, this is set in Scotland, set it in Scotland. That kind of the way. Don't make it so unambiguous.
Yeah, I think that's fair musically. I think the humor is quite Scottish, and there's some really good like lyrical and fun sort of Scottish accent puns in some of the songs as well. So they don't like get rid of it, but I kind of liked that like very purposeful juxtaposition for like very, very like 20th century musicals, Disney, High School Musical, modern Broadway, so kind of Wicked and stuff like that, juxtaposed with zombies and gore and this very bleak little Scottish town.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the gore on it. I do like a bit of zombie gore. So especially the snowman.
The snowman is chef kiss.
Yeah. And I really love her best friend, John. I just thought he was so funny.
Oh, God. He was the MVP for me. Yeah, played by Malcolm Cunningham. And the principal played by Paul Kaye.
He's so creepy.
So good. And who can't really sing, but has quite a good villain song at the end, which I appreciate. Like, good for them giving him a villain song. Like, there's also very clear kind of influences from kind of Disney structured films as well, which I really enjoyed. You've got it's very musicals 101. You've got your I Want song, you've got you've got your villain song, and I enjoyed it from that point of view. And I think it's just like, I thought the sensibility was really fun. Like, it's not perfect, it's not without its flaws, but I think they did a really good job with what they were trying to do. Yeah. There's definitely like 2 songs I would have cut because they were shit. Yeah. And there was 1 or 2 where I feel like they put them in for the sake of putting the songs in. They were like, we really like this song that we've written, even though they kind of make no sense in the context of the film. Yeah. Like, that would be my biggest criticism of it, I think.
Yeah. No, I did. It was grand. Like, it wasn't, I didn't hate it as much as I hated Repo. And I thought it was a nice little take on the zombie kind of genre.
Yeah, I think it's a really cute little indie movie, and I think the cast are really, really talented as well. There's a really great sequence as well where they're, for some reason, instead of just walking around the fucking building, going through this like creepy Christmas tree Christmas tree sale. Oh yeah, it's also set at Christmas, which is like, which I've already staked my claim to horror Christmas movies as well.
Oh yeah, of course.
My favorite subgenre. So it's also a Christmas movie. So, you know, a nice one to whip out around December time, watch it with
kids. Full of Christmas cheer.
Yeah, exactly.
And killer snowmen. Yeah, she goes around with like a candy cane lawn like ornament that's got a spike on the end, and that's how I was like, that's pretty cool. Yeah,
it was a nice touch as well. And then there's like her dickhead ex-boyfriend and his like crew as well, who have like, again, also quite a good villain song. And it's fun. It's not perfect, but I think I would recommend it if you're not going to be driven insane by musical numbers. It's good fun. Yeah,
it is. So let's talk about some also rans. What else do we have out there when it comes to horror musicals?
On film or on stage? Because I've got so many to offer.
Let's do a film and then we'll talk about a few stage ones, because I feel like just in case anyone is really getting into this subgenre of horror, we can direct them into, because you found some real gems.
Oh, I got some good ones.
Yeah. So let's start with the films.
I mean, I think this one of the most seminal horror films, musical films, really is Little Shop of Horrors.
Okay.
Like that's like banging tunes, great special effects.
Yeah.
Just really good all around. Like,
I've never seen it.
You've never seen Little Shop of Horrors?
I've never seen Little Shop of Horrors, no.
Oh God, I really did done you dirty not making you watch that for this episode. It's fucking great. Little Shop of Horrors is an absolute classic. And again, like much more influenced by the kind of sci-fi 1970s stuff, and it's a creature feature.
Yeah.
I suppose Sweeney Todd has to be mentioned. Yeah. So like Sweeney Todd is actually one of my favorite musicals of all time.
Okay.
I think it is one of the best stage horror musicals.
Yeah.
That film is a steaming pile of shite.
I didn't even, like, I knew it was a stage show beforehand, but like when I watched the film, I was like, it made me not want to ever seek out the stage show version.
Which is such a shame, I think, because like it is, I think, one of Stephen Sondheim's best musicals. Like it's so good. There is the original touring production with George Hearn and Angela Lansbury, and you can watch it on YouTube.
Okay.
If you are so interested. Because like there are bits that had to be left out of the film for reasons, and I know they are good reasons, but like there is a narration going throughout the entirety of the musical called The Ballad of Sweeney Todd, which is just not in the film at all.
Okay.
And it's like, there's some real scary shit in this show. Like, and it's a lot of it's audio. It's not necessarily gore on stage or anything like that. It's like there's this like screaming whistle that goes through a lot of the show and all this kind of stuff. It's like really intense.
Yeah.
And it's so good. And so I was very upset about how poor that adaptation was.
Yeah. I just think it was too Burtonized.
I mean, yes and no. I when originally it was announced, I was like, yeah, perfect. Like his aesthetic is absolutely what you need for this. But my main issue was that Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter can't fucking sing. And Sondheim is notoriously difficult to sing, even if you're fucking great at it. Yeah. Like, oh my God, just why?
Because it's Tim Burton and he must use Johnny Depp in every single film he ever does.
Yeah, he's too, oh no. Mm-mm. I mean, I liked Alan Rickman. Mm-hmm. That's all I can really say about that. Oh God, no, it is one of the most incredible musicals. It really is. And I think it's such a shame that I think a lot of people saw that movie and were like, well, this is a bit shit, really, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, those would definitely be two, I think, really strong contenders on the film front. There's some really fun screen to stage adaptations that I think are worth mentioning.
Yeah.
So one of my favorites from the last few years was actually the Beetlejuice musical.
Okay.
It's fucking great, you guys.
Yeah.
Obviously not really horror, but I think a lot of people, Beetlejuice is kind of a gateway drug to,
yes,
to horror,
definitely,
pure horror. Really, really good.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely excellent adaptation. There is still the Harry Belafonte stuff, but very,
Mhm.
very funny. Also, an entire song about having a dead mom, which I always appreciate. No one cares about your dead mom, Lydia. Oh, wait, we do.
That seems to be a running theme with a lot of musicals,
Yeah,
especially horror ones.
especially horror ones. Yeah. I already mentioned there's an Evil Dead musical, which was off Broadway.
Okay.
But it's really fun. It's very kind of it's like a doo-wop. It's very silly. It's very rock and roll.
Okay.
But it's exactly which is exactly what the Evil Dead was.
Yeah.
So that's a great one, I think. Let me think. Carrie is actually very good.
There's
The
a
Carrie
carry.
musical.
Oh my gosh.
There's also Silence, the musical, which is a parody of Silence of the Lambs. um, I think an honorable mention goes to the American Psycho musical.
My mind is being blown right now.
I know. Oh, I got so much more for you, baby.
Like the things you think would never be turned into a musical.
I know. Which is of Eastwick as well. The
Yeah.
American Psycho one is weird. It's not a traditional musical in that sense.
Okay.
Like there is a lot of, it's a lot of, again, recitative, so very kind of speaky singy.
Yeah.
A lot. It's electro based, obviously, because the 80s.
Right. Yeah.
And there is some use of like 80s songs, so not original to the
Right.
musical as well.
Okay.
Like it's weird. I think it was really cool on stage though. It looked cool.
Right. Okay.
um I am trying to think what else. What's that, Carrie? I'm looking through. I've already told Dolly this, but I created 2 bespoke playlists for my preparations. So there's a horror stage to screen and horror screen to stage. So I'm just scrolling through. There's a Dracula musical, which is at Eastwick.
There's a Jekyll and Hyde one.
There is a Jekyll and Hyde musical.
Yes. That was interesting. When you sent me that, I was like, hold up, what?
So, Jekyll and Hyde is actually a pretty good musical. It's got a couple of real banging tunes in it. And the transformation stuff on stage is really, it's where they do it in a really fun way. But a couple of years back, there was a production starring David Hasselhoff, and I was like, this is my favorite thing ever. Never going to stop watching him doing This Is the Moment. It's so good. And he really goes for it.
Oh, he does, yeah.
He's the most Hasselhoffian way I think I've ever seen. Like, it's hard to describe. There's something about the way he stands, and then he gets you can see him working up to the key change. You're like, oh, get it, David. Go on, you can do it. Believe in you. He really tries. He really goes for it. And it's not like the most amazing musical performance I've ever seen, but I'm kind of like, oh, I'm so happy for you.
Go on the Hoff.
Go on the Hoff, yeah. I'm just looking through my playlist, and there are some lovely little sort of lesser known musicals. So there's a musical called Zombie Prom, which is essentially what it says on the tin.
Right, okay.
Which is very silly. And also the Toxic Avenger musical, based on the comic book.
Yeah.
But my favorite weird one, and it's again actually a genuinely good musical.
Right.
Bat Boy the musical.
Okay.
So it's based on, do you remember news was it the World Weekly News? Yeah, World Weekly News.
No.
It was that little it was a small kind of, not tabloid, even smaller than that, paper that used to come out it was a weekly thing, and it used to be Cher's actually an alien.
Yes, I do remember, yeah.
So Bat Boy was a character that they made up, and they were Bat Child found in the jungles of the Amazon. And someone wrote a fucking musical, and it's great.
I feel what I feel has to happen now is we, obviously, when we can, that we may have to go to London when, a few of these shows are on, and we're just going to have to do weird horror musicals.
I would love to do that. If they were ever all on at the same time, I think my head would explode. I'd be so excited. You'd be
like, it's happening.
It's actually, it might be worth doing a kind of a separate one that's kind of horror on stage and screen, with stuff like The Woman in Black and Ghost Stories. Because I actually saw Ghost Stories on stage.
Okay.
And while it wasn't the most amazing thing I've ever seen, the way that they did it, the trickery of it, stagecraft was fucking excellent. It was really well done, really well thought out.
Yeah.
And I really think that horror on stage is hard.
Yes.
Like when it comes to a lot of these musicals, they are really comedies with horror elements. I think, which
Yeah.
you kind of already covered, really.
Yeah. I saw The Exorcist on stage.
Ooh.
And I saw it in the Gaiety the October before everything shut down. And it's brilliant. I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. It freaked me the hell out. Like you said, the trickery of it. You're like, how did they do that? Like, how did they translate that to stage? Fuck. Like when her head spins round, you're like, wait a minute. What's going on here?
Hang on a moment. Yeah, I would have loved to see that. I'm very disappointed that I didn't get a chance. And I'm really looking forward to. So myself and my partner were saying when we're able to travel again, we want to go back over to London. And like, so I go over like usually in normal times quite regularly to see shows. And there are a bunch of shows, including The Woman in Black, that I'm like, oh, that's going to run forever. I don't need to book that this time. So we're going to go over and book all the things that we're like, they're going to run forever.
Yeah, because we all know by now that,
just in case there's another pandemic, I'd be like, finally, I saw The Mousetrap.
So what would you like to see? Either a horror film translated to a musical or a musical translated onto the small screen? Is there anything that you would like to see?
I think that some of the horror films that are more kind of mood pieces, so like something like Midsommar could be really interesting done with like more music incorporated, like not necessarily a traditional musical in that sense, but like sound was so important in that, and a lot of it's very sort of like static shots and reactions and stuff, which means you could do it quite easily on a stage, I think. Maybe not easily, that's probably like go on, do that, it'd be fun. You know, those pieces that rely much more on kind of ambience and like a slow building sense of dread than jump scares. And then I don't know, I'd like to see more zombie musicals on stage. I think that's more zombies in general. And like ghost stories, haunted house movies, all that kind of stuff, I think all work really well in a stage context. What about you?
I don't know, because I'm not you know, I don't go to see musicals. I don't, you know, I think I saw Grease when I was really small. And I mean, I saw a few like school stage, you know, I saw Les Miserables on the local convent school, but I'm not, because I haven't gone to many musicals that I wouldn't know. Like, I wouldn't know what could translate well, what wouldn't. Like, I guess Saw the musical would be interesting. My leg.
I'd actually really dig that. I think that'd be really cool, because you could have like this stage could be like a rotating cube, and it's like a different trap in each side. Oh, that'd be good.
Quick, write it down.
I actually just stole that set idea from the Sweeney Todd. So, like the thing is, it's like the level of stagecraft that they have gotten to now. If a production is well funded enough, they can do so much. Like I saw. I went to see the Harry Potter show a couple of years back. And like I think as a theatrical experience, like, so not necessarily like the actual plot or any of that, but as a theatrical experience, it's one of the best things I've ever seen. Like, they had Dementors coming up through the crowd, and like, you know, people apparating and shit, and I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like literal magic. It was amazing. And I went to see The Ocean at the End of the Lane in 2019 as well, in the National. And that was one of the most stunning things, and like genuinely scary as well. Some really cool ways that they got that sort of creepy sense on stage, and then it was like just very, very cool. So like, I think if there's a good enough production team and it's worth doing, like, they can kind of do anything they want to do at this point.
Okay. So I guess that kind of wraps up our musical number.
Yes, indeed. Ooh, honorable mention to the Lestat musical written by Elton John, which has like been buried.
Yeah, because you told me about that, and you were like, "Oh, there's one thing on YouTube, and it's like really blurry." Like,
Just like, and it's really funny because it's now become like legend amongst musical theater fans. Like, oh my God, you got to see Lestat. Yeah, like they're trading playbills on the underground for like hundreds of dollars. It's very funny. Like Elton John is like, Lestat, never heard of him.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Very bad musical.
Yes. So thank you very much for coming back.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me waffle at you for like an hour about musicals. It's like my favorite thing to do.
So yeah, I can't wait to see what we come up with next.
Oh, God only knows at this point, right?
Yeah, I was thinking perhaps like children's horror.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I'm a big fan of I think when I was first on, I did say my first horror movie was Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
Which I can't believe I forgot to mention.
Oh yeah, that's a bit of a
Talk
musical.
about horror musicals.
Yeah.
Iconic.
Yeah.
Sads, don't at me.
Yeah. Sure, we'll do that in the children's one.
Yeah. Okay. That does sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah. So that was my chat there with Ruby Noir about horror musicals, and we discuss in particular Repo, the Genetic Opera from 2008, and 1975's Rocky Horror Picture Show, as well as Anne and the Apocalypse and a few others. I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast, and I hope you found it as informative and as fascinating as me. Let me know what you think about this week's episode, what you think about horror musicals and whether they meld well or whether they're things that should be kept very, very separate. Let me know on social media, so Facebook and Instagram at What a Scream Podcast. You can also catch me on Twitter at what_scream. And you can also find us on Letterboxd, so you can keep up to date with all the films that we will be discussing. So as always, I hope you are staying safe and you are enjoying your summer, or if you are in the other half of the world, your winter. And don't forget to stay horrific. Goodbye. Shouldn't be scared of Dracula. Shouldn't be scared